All right, welcome everybody to the week of the April 24th, 2020, episode 5 of the Yinzer Sage. I'm Mike, and this week we're going to have a discussion about behaviors that players could exhibit during games that could be disruptive or problematic, both on tabletop and in Neverwinter. And I'll do my normal segments of telling news, and I have a review for the Hackmaster DM's guide that I'll be doing. But with that, let's get started. This week, the news digest for April 24th. Bigger pieces of news is the San Diego Comic-Con's been canceled for the year. Games Workshop announced a cautious but optimistic update to the lockdown status of their retail stores. Their stores will begin to reopen based upon guidelines from local governmental authorities, some as soon as this week. They'll be open in limited capacity as there's no painting sessions or open play, and the stores themselves will have strict social distancing guidelines to protect both staff and customers. More good news, Diamond announced plans to resume shipping products starting in mid to late May. Shipments of product will begin with those originally slated for the release of the weeks of April 1st to April 8th, and a progressive rollout to allow publishers to work with printers to ensure product is available. While Diamond is primarily a distributor of comic books, its status with comic book stores make it one of the largest distributors of role-playing games to hobby stores, along with their subsidiary, Alliance Game Distribution. Separate announcements stated a process to being paying publishers again. One Bookshelf, the parent company of Drive-Thru RPG, DM's Guild, and other multiple digital role-playing storefronts, and announced an update to their COVID-19 situation. As expected, their operations have suffered only limited impact from the pandemic as the staff already work from home and most of the projects are digital. So far, print-on-demand books have not been affected, though other print-on-demand products such as GM screens, posters, and cards were shut down temporarily. Effective this week, however, they open those products or order again. Orders for those products are now open again. Though shipping times have increased as the printer is only working with limited staff to protect employees. There was a game store owner in Florida arrested this week after reopening his store in violation of state and local safe and home orders. He was warned repeatedly after the sheriff's office received complaints before the arrest last Thursday. The store owner, Galen Wood was reported as argumentative with sheriff deputies in previous encounters and refused to close the store. He called the arrest a show of hubris by the cops and the sheriff and stated his intention of fighting the charges. In the interview with ICV2, Wood said, "A free people should not live in fear of their own government when they know they're abiding by the law. We aren't ruled by men for that very reason. The rule of law is essential to a free government. FYI, if you haven't guessed, I do have a bachelor's in political science from the University of Florida." End quote. Many conventions canceled or postponed have announced moves to virtual spaces. First of those happened this past weekend. NordCon was held over Discord, and according to a post from Steve Jackson's game, was a resounding success. 453 came through the virtual doors, not counting staff and speakers. Over the 3 days of live stream panels, 2 online games of Deadly Doodles, there were a few technical hiccups, mostly with initials voice over Discord. But the past and plenty of time to have fun panels. 0 serious problems of any kind, 0 bad technical issues, 0 people problems, 0 boring events. The next to these events are ZEO Con from Zombie Orphis Entertainment, the filmmakers behind the Gamers, The Journey Quest, and Dark Dungeons is happening this weekend from April 24th to 25th, it happened this weekend. Paisio announced a new convention in Europe, Paisio Conferenza in Geneva, from August 13th to 16th. It was formerly known as Garden Con before the rebranding. It's a stone's throw from the border between France and Switzerland at Route de la Croix, Thernos, Geneva. Come enjoy the open air Paisio Con in the Benue Geneva countryside. Humble Bumble has partnered with Wizards of the Coast to provide a huge bundle of Forgotten Realms novels. The dollar tier includes the entire Dark Elf trilogy, Homeland, Exile, and Sojourn by R.A. Salvatore, featuring the origin story of Drizzt Do'Urden. The first two books in the War of the Spider Queen trilogy, Dissolution by Richard Lee Byers and Insurrection by Thomas M. Reed, and the first book of the Lady Pendant series, Sacrifice of the Widow by Lisa Smedman. The $8 tier features the Icewind Dale trilogy by R.A. Salvatore that first introduced Drizzt and his companions, the first two books in the Legacy of the Drow quadrilogy, the next two War of the Spider Queen novels, Condemnation by Richard Baker and Extinction by Lisa Smedden, and second Lady Pendant book, Storm of the Dead. The highest tier only gets you final two books of the Legacy of the Drow quadrilogy by R.A. Salvatore, the full Paths of Darkness trilogy by R.A. Salvatore, short anthology about Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore, the final two War of the Spider Queen novels, Annihilation by Philip Anthons and Resurrection by Paul S. Kemp, and the conclusion of Lisa Smedman's Lady Pendant trilogy. It benefits Extra Life and runs until Wednesday, May 18th. There's also a Warhammer 40,000 bundle there going until Wednesday, May 6th. That's all for this week. I would like to thank Abtus for the news of the week for April 24th. And now we're going to talk about problem players. I don't like to really call them that. I think we should be, unless they exhibit some or multiple of these behaviors intentionally, then it's more problematic player behaviors. However, there are a lot of them. I went and did research on like 5 different videos on YouTube. There were 4 websites that I were able to pull up and find that had actual lists and didn't just go into how to deal with them. One of the things that I noticed is some people want to find a way to punish the character for the player's behavior, and I don't think that's honestly the answer. If the player does something, which I'll go into for those who play evil characters, I have a whole topic about that. You shouldn't go punishing someone's character for stuff they're doing outside a game. Find a way to talk to the person, if you have to, as a party, so that they can understand their behaviors disruptive to just not themselves but others. You should have a 0 session. That's another reason that's such an important thing. It allows you to kind of lay out all these little ground expectations or rules in advance so that these behaviors don't actually get a chance to exhibit themselves. Although some of them may exhibit themselves regardless of whatever rules you put down. But the first thing I want to go over is traits of a toxic player. Excuse me. These are traits of a toxic player. They are self-centered. Things have to go their way. They're dominating, immature, overbearing, unhelpful. these are the types of things that can kind of be attached to any of these disruptive player behaviors that can enhance them in more negative ways. Uh, so those are things that, as a DM or other players, you may want to look out for. But a lot of these disruptive player behaviors, one of the first ones I want to talk about is the rules lawyer. Now, the rules lawyer is someone that knows the rules of the game and will outright debate them with the game master how things should be done, which kind of can either make the game run longer or it can just outright disrupt the game. Now, sometimes rules lawyers can be good. You know, they have the ability to know things that you may not be able to remember. And so if they do it the right way and they're not being condescending or browbeating or demanding they're always right, they can be used like to a purposeful meaning in the tabletop. A DM can actually use that kind of as like your right hand man. But a rules lawyer, yeah, they tend to. I've dealt with a few condescending ones, a couple that were browbeating, one or two that thought they were always right. It's always been a negative experience. I really haven't dealt with any in a long time. The next disruptive player behavior is the bully. Physically intimidating, sometimes a rage monster or a passive aggressive rage monster. This person will physically get in someone's face over they don't want their character to do something else, and they might be bigger than the people. Not saying that every big person does that. That's not accurate, because my best friend's a big dude and he doesn't do that. But these people can be pretty toxic in a role-playing game situation. If you can't get them to understand their behaviors being, impacting others in a negative way, sometimes you just have to get rid of them. The next one that I saw was called the snark. They're sarcastic and bite. They have arrogant a-holes. They can be. These are people who exhibit this constantly, who they're not rules lawyers, they're not spitting out the systems, but they think that they're better than all the other gamers. You could run into that once in a while. Usually talking to them gets them to chill out a little. There's the ignorer. The bulldozer, purposely not listening to others, distracted, there but not there, may pull a disappearing act. These are people that, you're trying to explain stuff and they're off doing all sorts of other stuff. And it can end up, disrupting the party, especially if that's the character who they needed to do the task. If the thief is off in La La Land elsewhere, he can't be picking a lock, right, won't know what they're about to walk into, might step on a trap, but needless to say, that's the type of behavior you could probably get rid of with in your zero discussion, your zero session. The next one I saw on here was called the jerk. They tend to be difficult and stubborn. They don't want to cooperate with how, they're not trying to take over the party, but they think their ideas should be used. I don't know. I've never really run into anybody like that. The next one's the timid. It said no spine, no voice. You'll run into shy people on occasion. Sometimes you just have to warm up to them, and eventually, they'll not be as shy. Then there's the next one, which is the non-participator. That's somebody who shows up to play but doesn't really do anything. They just roll during combat, and other players tend to have to tell them what they can do or what they should do. That can tend, after so long, after someone should be catching on to stuff, and if they're not, maybe they shouldn't really be there because they may not want to be there. Then I have the distracting. They can sometimes disappear during games as well. Or the distracted, I should say. They're kind of hand in hand with the ignorer, but they may not, be intentionally ignoring you. They may just be getting phone calls or, something. If it's an every game thing, then you have a problem. But if it's during one game or something, he might have, an emergency or something. But, it's something you might want to watch for. Then there's the actor, gets way into character, has a 5-page backstory, having character decisions that don't make sense to the party, tend to act against the party's interests because of something in their backstory or just because their alignment is lawful, can sometimes be an over-the-top, wearing props or bringing props such as actual weapons or costumes to game, which that can sometimes just be distracting or, if not dangerous, by knocking stuff over with, a big sword strapped to your back. Should make sitting down kind of difficult. Next one we have is the Munchkin. It's a combat-oriented player who doesn't roleplay, usually refers to new players who don't understand you should be playing a role in each game or each group as a team. They just sometimes need people to teach them, Then the next one we're going to talk about is called an edgelord. They play brooding anti-heroes or blatant evil. Now, these are the folks I was wanting to talk about. When characters want to inherently play evil, you need to just let them know that with evil actions come consequences, and if they continue, on some point, some level, their evil is going to be so blatant that they will do something in front of a town guard or whatever, and on some level they're going to get caught. When they get caught and they're executed, they have to accept, the more evil acts they continue to do, the higher the bounty on their head's going to be. People are going to go hunting for their bounty, There are ways to deal with these people. You just have to do it in an in-character manner as an inconsequence to the actions that they're doing. If they're screwing over a party that they're in, that'll balance itself out when the rest of the party kind of all teams up and goes, hey, he can't take 8 of us at one time. So, we all go at him. He's one person. He can only take 1 or 2 actions. We've all got that many actions against him, and we've ended up taking him out, The next type is called chaotic stupid. They frequently do evil or chaotic acts in game. They tend to play the same character every time. These ones are sometimes just, you have to talk to them and explain to them how their behaviors, interrupting everyone, or has in-game consequences, or you know, you could find ways to give them moments where they could be chaotic or evil. It's all in how you look at the situation. The next one I have is the unprepared. They show up with almost nothing. Uh, they're asking other members for dice. They're, borrowing character sheets because they forgot theirs. Uh, Heck, I've known a couple that showed up literally with just a pencil, and sometimes they didn't have that. You know, so you had to have somebody give them pencils, somebody give them dice, somebody let them borrow the book, someone give them a character sheet. It just, yeah, there are people like that. All you can really do with them is just keep talking, explaining to them, hey, make a suggestion to them, get a box that you put your dice bag in, some pencils, maybe you can fit your character sheet in there and just keep that stuff together, teach them a little bit of organization with your gaming might help. The next one I have is the behind the scenes home brewer. These are the people that will show up and they will have come up with their own class or prestige class or some form of race or something that maybe the DM doesn't have time to really look over, and he probably shouldn't allow in there, but people take advantage of that as well. With them, you just have to, that's why with my tabletop games, if you want something, you either have the book or you have it on paper. I need to read it. I need to look at it, and make sure that it'll fit within my campaign. The next one on my list I have is the tactician. Some people can call these min-maxers or power gamers. Honestly, I don't see an issue with these people unless you're talking in a player versus player or PvP aspect. I'll go into the Neverwinter stuff later, but yeah, unless it's affecting a PvP aspect, these people mostly just want to be action. They want, to be the one who can, win combat more, and that's fine. They can be an asset to, a party that most people want to role play. They need somebody who can really be that combat guy. They got them, they could be useful. I mean, I can understand in some campaigns they may be frowned upon, but at the same time in other campaigns that might be a whole campaign. They might all be, people who are looking to be just as powerful as everybody else. So it may not be a actual negative player behavior unless it directly affects, the campaign that you're trying to run. And that's something that, you should be talking about in your zero session as well. The next one I have is called the grudge bearer. These are people that, you killed their character 8 games ago, and out of nowhere, they kill your character in revenge for you killing their character 8 games ago. I've seen a few of these hold grudges for a couple years, and finally execute their vengeance. It can definitely cause a party to split or a gaming group to break up. Definitely. Which brings me to my next one, a team killer. Someone who purposely goes in and just destroys the group. They're usually, they do it via combat, or they find some way to destroy the majority of the group in one action or something. One example I could think of is we were playing a homebrew game me and my friend kind of designed, and one of the players decided to bring in Star Wars. So he had a TIE fighter. Well, the rest of us were all just normal people with skills and maybe a gun or two and knowledge of the supernatural, possibly. And this guy comes with the TIE fighter and just blows the cabin up that we're all in, So we all died immediately, killed the game. He kind of rage quit. It, you know, it definitely showed me the weakness in that game, where you kind of have to lay out expectations in advance with that, style of game. You can't have, it being as open as you want, because even though, like, the understanding was if you whatever you brought in, the DM could bring in and use against you. Well, he didn't get a chance to do that, he ended up basically, just killing the party and quitting. But needless to say, I think it was something that had been boiled up for a long time. I think we needed a break or something, maybe. And the next one I'm going to talk about is a steamroller. They find a way to jump out of a turn, cut off other players when you can't wait their turn. When you're, as the DM, you're looking at the first character or first player, and you say, no, what are you going to do? And the guy directly across the table from you starts spitting out what he's going to do. This guy can't answer, this other guy that's what a steamroller technically is. And those you just, kind of make them wait their turn. That's the only thing you can really do with them. The next one I have is called the Puppet Master. It's one who makes all the decisions for the party in a forceful manner. Now, I'm not talking he's a bully. I'm talking he will continue to push his idea until the rest of the party accepts it as that's what they're going to do. He will be kind of demanding, but he won't be, intimidating or anything. It's one of those almost kind of fine lines, but I've seen quite a few of these where, the person wasn't being mean or aggressive, but they would not back down from their idea, and their idea was the best idea, and it had to be used. And, that's just, how that went. The next one I have is willfully ignorant. And these are the people that they never learn minor information, such as how to roll damage, or how to roll an attack, or what is armor class. They don't seem to grasp some of the basic concepts of the game, even some of the basic mechanics, and that's something that maybe you need to find a way to help them remember that, learn. Some people learn better by writing it down. Some people learn by hearing it, played to them over headphones, or some people learn better by watching it in a video. It just all depends on the person. There are ways, if you talk to them, you could probably get them to remember these things. The next one we have is the escalator. They're always doing over-the-top things in game to make it more exciting, such as they walk into a bar, they slap the waitress and throw a bottle of rum into the fire and say, this place was too chilly. And, you can get people who want to do stuff like that. There are ways to utilize them in your game. Just, make them understand they can't, go just doing anything they want without consequences. You slap the barmaid, the bouncer's going to come over and slap you. You throw the bottle of rum in the fire, well, now you got to go chop firewood because you put the fire out, or you caught the place on fire, depending on how high of an alcohol volume it has. The next one I have is the lone wolf. It's a type of character who goes off while the party is sleeping. leaves during his turn on watch, like the rogue who wants to go sneak into the little keep you're hiding right nearby. Uh, these people can, sometimes get the party into more trouble and just cause more problems for your campaign. I tend to find ways to ensure that they don't leave camp, such as, as they're sitting in camp, they see shadows pretty far off, but a large number of them just surrounding the entire camp. They can currently count like between 15 to 20 creatures. You can't tell what they are, but you can see humanoid shapes. And you're not too sure. They're just all standing there watching you. You don't want to go finding out what they are. You just have that gut feeling. And I've had quite a few players, tend to take the hint, and I was able to keep it from, getting out of hand. The next one that I was able to find was called the metagamer. They take actions that are out of character based on the knowledge of the game and the GM. What's possible to metagame in a positive way. Troublesome metagamers help their characters succeed instead of improving the gaming experience for everyone. If the character knows the weakness of every opponent listed in the monster manual, acts cautiously after you call for a spot check, or is suspicious of NPCs who ill intent was revealed out of game, you have a metagamer on your hands. The easiest way is basically reduce the knowledge they have. Reskin the creatures so they don't recognize them from any reference guides. Ask for regular spot checks and listen checks instead of only calling for them when they're relevant in game. If you narrate any scenes between villainous NPCs to foreshadow or build tension, don't name or describe the characters that are talking. That way the players won't recognize them when their characters meet them. If you have one or two players in metagaming at a more blatant level, gently call them out. Often metagamers simply don't realize what they're doing or know any better. You can help them learn better habits. The next one we have is kind of like the distractor. They call them the derailer. They're easily distracted from the task at hand. They like to talk with people. They're not picky about what they talk about. They'll drop out of character to chat about the latest news or most recent podcast. They're just the same as distracted players. There's nothing really. You just have to keep, providing direction. You have to get help from more of your players. Whenever this person gets off, can you guys, help me get him back on task? Usually your party will help you out with that. Next is a game jacker. It's a GM, writer, or another storyteller with lots of their own ideas. They aren't used to lack of control that comes with being a player in a collaborative campaign. As a result, they put a lot of effort into trying to steer the direction of the story to fit their own ideas and preferences. They think they're being helpful by taking everyone in that direction. And it says the best way to deal with them is they're going through an adjustment period. Given time, they'll relax. You can speed the process by talking to them privately, letting them know the effect they're having on the other players. If they're a writer, tell them role-playing is improvisational. They have to let go and allow events to happen naturally. If they're a GM, inform them that this is your game and you have an extensive and secret plans that will never come to fruition if they continue taking control. The next one we have is called the Joker. The Jokers role-play in a wacky and silly manner. They create one-dimensional characters that maximize novelty and hammer out that one note at every opportunity. They might spend all their energy converting NPCs to a cult that worships toilet paper, or romancing a character with a beard, or any character with a beard. And I can understand why some people would find some of these people annoying. But at the same time, if used properly, they can create some great, comical relief to campaigns that can get dark and gritty at times. I've found ways to, you have to, as a DM, be able to entertained everybody at the table. Uh, with that one, I'm going to go ahead and I found this article on EN World called the Type 10 RPG Player Types. The article is written by Challenger RPG from November 12th, 2012, or November 11th, 2012. It goes, as a GM and game designer, I think it's laughable that you could ever separate people into different personality types, let alone gamers. However, since I have to write another article, why not? Yesterday, I'll be pigeonholing all gamers into several broad, vague, and inaccurate types, with no hint of useful information anywhere in sight. In fact, this article's sole purpose can be said to allow a reader to shove it under his friends' noses and say, "Ha, you're a blank. Have fun. I hope you have a laptop." Number 1. The hardcore non-gamer. These are the nuts that sometimes wind up in your games even though they and you don't want them there. They're the kind of people who will discuss salmon runs for 10 hours in the middle of a game, wander off to watch TV, and don't understand the most basic of game conventions, such as shut up when the GM is talking. Remedy, ban them from your games. Now, I personally am not going to suggest listening to any of these remedies. I don't think any of these are actually useful, but some of these, I've met people that fit some of these. 2, the ultimate power gamer. You know these guys. These are the guys you've been gaming with for the last 20 years, the one that, despite having real lives now, never cease to delight in trampling your finest adventure into diamond dust. If you hand these guys a set of dice and a rule book, they'll walk all over your campaign world, stuff it in a bag of holding, and rule the world in short order. Remedy, destroy them, then back up the truck and do it again just in case. As I said, we should not be listening to any of these remedies. Casual gamer. These are people who vaguely remember gaming once 10 years ago. They didn't care for it enough to actually learn what they're doing, but they don't mind showing up and interfering with your games every blue moon. The casual gamers tend to get bullied into playing by their friends, boyfriends, the GM, and then muck things up. Sometimes they even do well-meaning things, but with such incompetence and vagueness that the whole game or their character wastes away into a dragon compost. Remedy, turn them to the dark side. 4. Experienced rules lawyer. These players are often former or current GMs who think the rules of the game are actually there for a reason. The difference between a rules lawyer and a power gamer is that power gamers think rules get in the way, and rules lawyers actually like them. The players often have a thorough understanding of the rules, but with a complete lack of ability to implement them properly in their own games. Remedy, ignore the rules. Role player. Next to non-existent. Role players are among the few of an endangered species which actually have their heads screwed on straight and play RPGs to roleplay. When they're young, they tend to get trampled by the power gamers. When they're old, they tend to have lives and better things to do. Because of their proper judgment and common sense, they make great world leaders and poor long-term gamers. Such players will often complain about the antics of other players while missing 95% of the campaign because of work and other priorities. Remedy, force them to roll a die occasionally and fight things. Otherwise, there's not much you can do with them. Game crushers. These players don't so much play games as abuse them. While a power gamer seeks power to dominate the game and then roleplay happily, a game crusher fanatically seeks power and ways to abuse the system with no clear end goal in sight except perhaps to finish off the campaign universe and tell it as a war story. These players often tend to brag about loopholes in famous computer, video, RPG card games to the same extent normal people often shake their heads at them. Game crushers like convoluted systems and would probably rather be beating you 15 times in a row with a broken magic card deck than playing an RPG. Remedy, return the favor. So you're the GM, so you have no trouble crushing them. Sticklers. These guys are like rules lawyers but with no clear agenda. While a rules lawyer seeks loopholes like a crooked lawyer, a stickler simply supports rules like a jumped-up traffic cop. Remedy, quit the game and GM your own. If their players, simply overrule them. Number 8 are realists. These players think the more realistic a game system is, the better. They often never get tired of promoting their favorite realistic system with all its varied merits. However, they completely miss the ballpark on the grounds that RPGs are a load of hokum, and that's the way most of us like them. You're playing a game for cripe's sakes, it's not real life. These kinds of players would argue that Mario can jump too high to be realistic and he should suffer more wounds for falling. Remedy, point the little plastic metal men and say very slowly, not real. Authors, actors. These players and GMs think they're creating a world with lifelike characters. They think their setting is better than anything on the published market, and their acting ability is up there with Johnny Depp. When not embarrassing the group with cheap theatrics, they're building an awesome world complete with elaborate backgrounds they force on you. While having good acting and writing skills can improve your games no end, taking things too far quickly suck the life out of a game. Did you hear me? Game, not novel, not screenplay, game. Remedy, just try to remind them this is a game they're playing, even if they're writing a novel or planning to star in Transformers 10. Number 10, hardcore. Some players aren't power gamers. They're not actors. They're not novelists either. They're certainly not casual gamers because they've been showing up for your games for weeks without problems. These players are scattered across the board, from guy who sits in the corner saying nothing to girl who makes stacks of D4s to the ever-present guy who always plays a wizard. And of course there's always the girl who likes to play a magic item crafter even when you're playing a hard sci-fi game set in the year 4015. These are players that make gaming These are the players that make gaming great. You can't fit them into a ready pigeonhole. They're a blend of everything and nothing at the same time. They do weird things, and that's why we love them. Really, we're all a bit of a hardcore. None. Don't try to fix people. I'll just hit you in the head with a giant fluffy D6. So that was the 10 types of RGP player types from EN World. I will include a link in the show notes on that one, as well as the other websites that I found, and one of the videos that kind of goes over every of them. I will also add a link to that in the show notes as well. As far as Neverwinter, the types of negative player behavior that exhibited in there, I asked the community, and I got an answer from Anthony Fraley. One that I find incredibly amusing, on RP servers at least, is in the description, an OC comment being made in an attempt to push passive-aggressive form of power gaming over others playing. I see it very often in bios descriptions, and examples would look something like this. OOC, please be aware. I roleplay my character to have certain advantages and abilities that far exceed the means anyone is capable of. I would expect others to cooperatively accept this and go along with RP. However, if you are one that min-maxes character builds, PvP type of builds, and or in general disagree or not cooperate with my RP, please stay away and simply do not bother. Translation of such. Hi, I will RP situations that will affect your characters, where you like it or not. Play along or else. If you fight back, build mechanically better characters, or would potentially wreck my character in a fight that RP would cause, go away. Anytime I see this, I laugh and absolutely discard such folly attempts. Player-to-player wise, it's just flat out wrong to tell players no matter how it's worded. How their characters will react, behave, and conform simply given on the dynamic RP presented to them. And I have to agree with him on that. If you can't physically do something in Neverwinter, you shouldn't be claiming you are able to do it. Now, from Jessica Lynn Argandeza, I got basically everything stems from two major problems. One, a lack of meaningful social interactions in real life, leading to living vicariously through a character with little to no OOC separation. Any insult to the character becomes an insult to you. Any character accomplishment becomes real, and any relationship becomes genuine. Closeness, and though this is the person, becomes generally toxic person to try and interact with. Two, fear of missing out or fear of missed opportunities. This stems from disconnect between players with more or less playtime or different time zones. It leads to toxicity such as perception of nepotism and favoritism and rallying against cliquish behavior. One group of individual fears they are missing opportunities at the expense of another group. I suppose the third would be tottery. Twitch, which thinks it's got exclusive rights on that, and yet MWN was the OG home of internet tots. At least Twitch tots work for money and not just DM attention, though. Ha ha. And a fourth, which can be tied to the first, people that incorrectly assume being an admin, developer, or DM on a server imparts any significance or impact upon their person or self-importance. You build or help run a game. You aren't special. So you can probably stop taking your lack of agency or importance in the real world out on the people that you mod for or whatever. And then in that conversation, Anthony Fraley added in, there are various types of players that also serve some of these deep purposes. You have action players. They want to go adventure, go beat up monsters or bad guys, get treasures, and have little or no use for any others or anything else offered. While they play, it's not really like to contribute while playing. Then you have social players. These sit around in small groups when they can, and RP. Problem is they do it so much, and nothing else they do, it gets stale, but at least they contribute something back to the community they play with. Then there's the rule mongers canon crowd. On page 313, paragraph 9, it clearly explains you shouldn't have this build because it's in the rulebook. You can't. Oh, this PW is garbage. Ilminster, as we all know, is right-handed, not left-handed, and Silvermoon is on the other side of the bridge, and the Orc Crag should be that way. Gasp, the inn has tables wrong, the horror. Players so focused on crap that don't really matter, often breaking immersion and lessening the fun of others playing with such an evasive pressure to perfectly represent every little thing. Then the video gamers, the OC people, players who accept and like meta mechanics and often challenge the player aspects, not the character played aspects. Example would be a puzzle or decrypting a script you've got to go out and Google to decipher. They don't differentiate player from tomb played, even though they play multiple tombs, all with different traits and skill sets. They still find OC player challenges acceptable and fun. Video gamers often detract from immersion and usually contribute little, save to beg admins to install more crap for them to do because they are now bored, uncaring if anyone else really wants that junk in their favorite playground too. Then there's the stereotypers, cookie cutter players. Yeah, the ones that hide behind chaotic evil just to be jackwagons, and the others that play lawful stupid pallies just to be disruptive prats. We've all met them. Well, I figured out your character's evil even though you've never seen or been caught doing an evil thing. I should PvP or smite you in the name of Torm. Or just some bland vanilla personality, no description, so no thought behind the character being played, equally as bad. So forgettable and often causing awkward situations when encountering others because you lack of content to give and take with. And, like I said with the edgelords, you kind of have to, make players' characters deal consequences in game if they present themselves to that situation, where if they do things blatantly in front of others and you present those others with that possibility, there's the town guard, hey, why don't you go tell him, you witnessed it, you want to get rid of him, or I shouldn't maybe recommend that. As a DM, you could just to, maybe teach him a lesson, fine him, 50 gold or something, the first time for stealing. It might make, but if you have one that's going on your forums and typing out how they slaughtered an entire village, then you may want to, respond with a major reward being put out on their head and, dealing with that, let role play, they have to understand that at some point their character is going to get caught and their character is going to get, put to death. It's just a thing you have to accept. And then you have griefers, pickpocketing trolls, or those finding the most wonky ways to abuse NWN's system and constantly go around being disruptive to everyone else playing they can, just to get whatever stupid thrill of doing it gives them. Then you have the PvPers, high levels, PKing low levels, people spending days trying to mechanically puzzle out the best build to go on clicky mouse combat on someone else until it doesn't work. Then they go find a build to counter the build that just bested them, ending in a never-ending loop of nothing but the same old boring crap over and over and over and over and over. Or those that will lurk around trying to provoke others in PvP engagements, even if it's not really befitting the situation setting and the rest of the play going on around them in the realm. Then there's immersive players. Those players that like the realm PW they play and have detailed histories, personalities, and contribute to the place they play in, providing life into otherwise very static places. They do equal parts adventuring, socializing, but are often shunned by the above types for one reason or another. Also, a bit good at jealousy, perceived favoritism from those that find these strong suited personalities from those that fail to perceive themselves as better than those players at the same exact things from others, even if they are not immersive players themselves. Then there's the OOC preset player, almost scripted. This is what I'm going to build. This is how RP will go between us. It goes from point A to point Z in order. The filler in between doesn't matter, and as long as each step is attained along the way, don't expect these players to ad hoc or be very accepting of anything outside the pre-planned scripting crap they come up with. They will have no use for anything dynamic, and their whole fantasy world falls apart. If anything disrupts their plan, they usually types that put an OOC does and don'ts in their descriptions. Generally, the most passive-aggressive control freaks that inhabit are PPWs like a virus, and quite often the ones at odds with the good immersive dynamic role players in the same places they play in. And Jessica replied to that one. That is all very comprehensive, but I feel like the only ones that truly ruin my immersion or enjoyment personally are the ones that start to treat the game as a substitute for social life. I can put up with a lot, but when you turn this game into a living embodiment of your life and start taking things that happen to your character personally, we're not going to have a good time. Same goes for treating being an admin as something that actually deserves some sort of actual respect beyond the common respect one gives another person. Then Anthony Fairley also brought up, there's the age-old hurry-to-point clicky combat, blaze ahead of the party on the same DM quest, no planning, watered-down RP, no real thought into other strengths and weaknesses in the group, no using choke points and tactics, just run as fast as one area allows to the next until rewards are handing out for participating. Next one was brought up by M.O. Ament. People asking for buffs, and I responded, I could understand if they're just running up to everyone asking for buffs. If players are in a party together, I could see a reason for asking fellow party members for buffs while adventuring, but I could see where, you're on a server and you have someone asking for buffs, just randomly, that could get annoying. The one that came up was Power Gamers challenging everyone in PvP, knowing they would win on an RP server. Most of the time, they don't even take the effort of resurrecting you afterwards. And I mentioned with the PKing, there's the ones that, are 15 levels above new characters, and they'll hunt these new characters just to be jagoffs, that I don't agree with. There's a loophole in power builds in NW. This is from Anthony Fraley. There's a loophole in power builds in NWN. At some point, there will be another power build that will counter the power builds used. In reality, fallacy of PvP combat falls under this category. It's very still and basically chase your own tail kind of play. I sort of dislike the opposite end of the spectrum more, though. A player just made a tune, yet might even be RP cool, but mechanically lacking, yet they're going to get stupid and do things to irritate Goat and generally try to force you to get their character and to engage them in a physical confrontation. And then when you lay the smackdown, which should end it then and there, they complain and scream power game or PvP builder cheating simply because you had a build that could outdo theirs. I just had this happen to me. A crackhead was talking crap and casting spells around a social party where no one was armored, geared, buffed, actually damaging a lot of innocents. My character, the muscular knuckle duster, went to intervene on everyone's behalf, and the prat wouldn't stop the behavior and egged it on. Finally, this player directly challenged mine to a duel of honor, so off to the arena we go. I let him buff up, waited around, watched, then as he attacked, bam bam, dev crit save failed, down he goes after me rezzing him, and days later is still complaining about power gaming and unfair advantage. Same levels, by the way. How cheap it was I had dev crit, but in all honesty, wasn't my fault he wasn't crit immune or had epic dodge, and I just happened to have a strong dev crit character. Also, didn't twist the prat's arm to be disruptive turd in the first place. In one other instance, one of the more elite guild members of a guild I joined in took a very strong OOC stance against my participation in a group because of my class choices. The hours after hours of trying to get the DM to just flat out ban me from the group because I refused to go re-level and dumb it down. It finally came to light reasoning behind the outburst. Simply put, my build was stronger than his, and he seen no mechanical way to push my character around as a new member. See, the opposite end is very problematic concerning builds too. I don't really build for PvP or try to powder build. I definitely don't stack classes in just the right order. Don't spend skill points just right all the time. Probably miss a feat or two during my builds. Generally just pick crap that tends to fit my character concept. I don't spend overtime overthinking things or trying to min-max anything. And I had to agree with him. And I said the main aspect of PKing I was going to mention had to do more with much higher level characters stalking in lower level areas for players to go PK. If there's an RP reason for such combat to take place, then honesty always fair. I agree with your points as well. I don't make PvP characters either. My example would be the Undead Slayer I play. By chance, my party was attacked by another party that one of the members was a vampire. The party was about 10 levels higher than us, but we had 2 extra members. They did not account for one of us to be ranged in 5 tanks. We had a mage and cleric in support positions. They had 4 fighters and a mage and a cleric. The cleric was the vampire. When I toasted him easily, not knowing he was one, I had errors that did positive and divine damage. Scripting on the server made it do double damage to him every time I hit him. It was a built-in weakness from the players playing vampires. They knew that from the moment they became one. But the player insisted I was metagaming and power building because I dropped him with 2 hits. The DMs told me not to worry about it because they attacked us. And I'm expressing, both viewpoints to explain why PvP PKing is not always power gaming, And then the next one is from Emil Ament. People taking playing evil way too seriously, talking about rape, torture. And I would have to agree. Definitely, as an admin, you should either have or, put some form of disclaimer that you do not want any type of rape talk on your server. Honestly, that just save you a lot of headaches. I don't know anybody who actually does that except possibly on Sinfar. I don't, there's just certain things you shouldn't, if you're going to present them in your world or server or module, you should put some type of disclaimer in there warning people, there are these situations. Otherwise, I don't understand why, the subject of rape would have to be part of a role-playing game. I try not to make it one. I have never actually made it one. I've purposely, kept that out of my games. I don't see a need for it whatsoever. Torture, I could understand, if a player was captured or the players capture someone they need information from. I have had players do torturous stuff. As I was saying with evil characters before, you kind of have to enforce on some level that they're going to get caught eventually by somebody, and that the consequences are something they're going to have to accept. I mean, it's just that's the only way I know of, outside of, for my world, I'm putting a sign, and on any description of the worlds, I'm going to post and actively state, this is a world for good characters. Evil characters will not have as easy of a time, nor will they have as fun of a time. They tend to live short-lived lives. So I'm hoping to deter characters from playing evil that way. The next one from Alex Corin. He brought up clicks are a bane of a good server. They tie in with DMs that show favoritism to specific players. It will kill an otherwise good server and prevent meaningful growth of a positive player base. Anthony Fairley had a counter to that. Clicks, he says, I have somewhat a counter to that statement in a way. Mostly because clicks isn't actually an unavoidable aspect to do in any activity, social activity at all. People are going to gravitate more to those they find common ground with, shared interest in playstyles. That inherently isn't a bad thing, but a positive one. However, players outside some of these collective groups are normally outside them for a reason. I've been around to players who immediately rubbed me wrong way and rather avoided as much interacted with them as possible. Some people you will just not mess with. What do? Stop RPing, playing, disrupt the ongoing stories because Joe over there is a scuzz bucket and doesn't feel like he's included in our little group? No. There's reasons people get outcasted, and it's usually very earned reasons. Now, in an instance where a clique is more elitism, only the cool kids allowed club, where everyone but a select few are chosen to get all the goodies, participation, and only voices DM's admin will hear, yeah, that kind of clique kills things off fast. And then Michael Armalt brought up newbie killers. They're usually the very same people who complain that there are only the same few players on a server PW. I used to see it all the time. You'd spend an hour or two on reading the PW's rules, settings, limits, which usually include anti-griefing. And after entering the world at first level, first players you run into in the starting area are 15 plus levels, slaughter you, and then when you res, they come back and do it again. And Anthony Fairley put in a little somewhat funny reply to that, which was player cries, screams, tosses a tantrum. Where are all the players? This sucks. It's the same people over and over. DM, what's wrong with that? Player, I can't kill them, they're in a clique. It's favoritism. DM, okay. So we had 15 new players logging last week by the server logs, all left under an hour showing up. Wonder why? Player, I totally wrecked those guys, but let's get back to the real problem. I'm bored. We need more people. And I totally can see where that would be an annoying factor. As I said, that falls into the whole PKing under. You almost have to find ways to put limitations on that, or, find ways to possibly, like, I found a bounty system that was on the vault that I'll be utilizing for people to place bounties on these, player killers or other people for whatever. And I'm going to try and find a way to implement higher bounties on it as well, but that'll be at a later time. But with that said, that would be the entire discussion just about problem behaviors exhibited by players in both tabletop and Neverwinter Nights. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the Hackmaster Game Master's Guide. This is my review. One thing I can highly recommend this book for is for any game master who wants to learn how to be a game master. Just outside of the rules in here for Hackmaster, this book gives a ton of NPC generation tables, ways to make up NPCs, with descriptions. It gives a really detailed section on how to create adventures or campaigns. There's a ton of tables in here that could be used in any role-playing game, honestly. Maybe not the magic item tables. There's design advice. That's the one that I was talking about. This is probably one of the best design advice. It just gives you different ways of looking at it. Telling a story, designing a dungeon. Uh, you know, it doesn't go into world building so much, um, but it does help with other aspects of dungeon design. And then, like I said, there's a couple decent NPC sections in here. Then it had character vitals, different things it added in, a decent between adventures section. All sorts like this. If a lot of games that I've read, game master guides, this book covers a lot of things that like the other ones just either tend to narrate over, or there's not many type of in-depth rules for it. This book tends to have stuff like that, so it might be ideas for ways to do stuff in other games, or to create your own little rules for them. It has like the one thing about this that I really like is in the combat section is a series of critical hit tables that go into specifics like how severely damaged you are, how severely wounded you are, depending on what type of weapon hit you, or a spell. There's all sorts of different fumbles and mishap tables for archery and regular weapons. But the GM advice is also pretty good. This is honestly one of the first times that I've seen that they actually focus just on their game, on how to run their game, specifically how to explain their game to other people, how to get their game across to others in a way so that they'll understand what you're trying to convey to them. And for that, I have to go with the whole 5 stars. I love the new Hackmaster system. I have the creature book, monster manual for it, but I think that's in storage. I'll have to find it one day. But in the meantime, update from my persistent world I've been building, my novels. Update as far as the persistent world. I finished off putting placeables in 2 areas. So the inner part of the temple is done. I just have to connect transitions and finish 2 more areas of placeables, and then I'm going to build 4 more areas, and then I'll connect all those, and then that'll be the first actual time I run through and record it for everyone. My novels, I've decided I'm going to start releasing some of my novels on a blog, 1 chapter at a time. And when I finish a book, I will put it out there, in a book form, but it will be readable per chapter on my blog. Once I have that together, I'll have all the connected sites on the different Yinzer, Sage, Facebook page, community, Neverwinter Nights community news podcast page, which is essentially the home for the Neverwinter Nights community. Needless to say, I'll be looking for any opinions, critiques. I understand it may not be for everybody, but I'd like some honest opinions. Needless to say, with that, I'm not sure about next week's episode, what I'll be doing, what I'll be reviewing. I got a bunch of new Starfinder books in. I'll find out sometime during this week, and I'll post suggestions. Remember, if you want any type of a shout out for your Neverwinter Nights world, module, system. If you're looking for worlds, leave your contact info and I'll shout out that you're looking for places to play. Just tell me what type of, server or what type of role play or what type of style of play you're looking for, and I'll relate that. I'm also willing to answer questions on here. My email will be at the end of this. If you want to send in for questions, I'll answer them on every episode. I still haven't gotten any for that. I have one review coming here in the next week or two. I'm looking for more reviewers, people who want to review mods and or persistent worlds. I'm looking for people to do positive, critical reviews. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like everything. I just don't want it to be posted in a negative manner that would degrade or demean any individual persistent world. I think that every persistent world has something unique that it offers to the community, and maybe we should focus on those qualities, but do mention some of the negative qualities that you just personally found that I could accept, as long as you're not degrading or demeaning anyone personally. Then I'll have no problem with that. But with that said, we're going to end this week's episode. And thank you all for listening. And everybody have a good one and game on. Peace.